All right. So today we're into moving practice. No props required whatsoever today. What I am going to take you through is meant to open up, well, everything, but in particular over the last number of weeks we've had some requests for shoulder work. And I specifically, I'm always, when I'm practicing, I'm trying to or when I should say when I'm teaching, is share with all of you some aspect of my actual practice. And so the starting sequence that we're going to work with is really shoulder and upper back, and I guess to a lesser extent chest related, like just loosening this whole area up here up, okay? The other thing though is that, and I wanted to give you a little demo at the outset before we even start breathing, just so we're not like, we settle, you get into all that kind of yogic goodness of like chilling out, and then I like ask you to like click in your analytical brain. We don't want to do that. So I just, a quick demo, just without a whole lot of yoga anatomy. How's that? Okay? I'm gonna make it super simple. And what I'm gonna depend on you that are here to let me know is if I failed in that endeavor. Okay? So a number of people, you can, oh, yeah, for sure. And I should say, you know what? My apologies. I should say this every time, and I kind of take it as a given because I've seen a lot of the faces over and over, and they've heard my kind of my patter, but I should do it every time. So let me say again, any of the suggestions I make are just that, suggestions. So please don't feel obligated to if I say, lift your arm this way, and it doesn't feel good, don't do it. Okay? If I say lift it this way and that doesn't feel good, but this way it does feel good, then that's the way you lift it. Like, in fact, what a big part of my practice for anybody, is to encourage you to listen to your body intuitively. So not my brain's telling me I should be doing this, or my eyes think that the pose should look like this, or the teacher, in this case, is sitting like this, so I should sit like this. Not at all. In fact, this pose, hero pose, is a good example. If I had tried to do this before I had taken my yoga teacher training for any amount of time, like more than about 10 seconds, I would have just and snuck out because the tops of my feet would have absolutely been screaming, okay? Sitting like this in what's called easy pose, equally good. But the reason I just said easy is this is not necessarily easy, this kind of cross-legged stance. So you can also, I also like this sort of more ready position of sitting right up on your sitting bones, okay? Now this isn't a yoga pose in particular, or you could call it chair pose, okay? The kind of pose where we would be here in chair pose, except that it's truly a seated chair, okay? Your feet are there, my toes aren't there, they're there, okay? So I'm really, and I'm actively trying to bring my belly towards the fronts of my thighs, okay? And then just hooking in so that I can relax, okay? So, but look, you could be in a side stance, you could be standing, you could be lying, truly anything goes, okay? The only rule is if it hurts, back away from the pain. We don't need to invite more pain or stress in. If it feels challenging, maybe explore it. If that's what you feel like on a given day. If it feels relaxing, yeah, more of that, okay? Oh, and we've got a late admittance. Okay. So welcome. So in terms of, so I hope that clarifies around this. I'm truly now just sitting like this because it's comfortable for me. That's cool? Awesome. Okay. So shoulders, and this whole complex of muscles that we refer to as the rotator cuff, okay? I'm not going to turn this into a whole big anatomy lesson where we would actually get in, here's the supraspinatus, and here's your anterior deltoid, and all of the musculature and everything, the bones that go in. Forget about that for today. If you're totally down, you're have questions, off practice time, I'm happy to chat with anyone, bearing in mind that I'm not a doctor or a clinician, right? Well, it's important to say because you would be... Yeah. Well, no, I hold myself to account just in the sense of people not. Yeah. Okay. So where the shoulder cuff, the rotator cuff gets kind of creaky for people, for a lot of people, and again, it's a complex joint. If I was gonna generalize, what I would simply say is, of the major girdles in your body, two hips, sorry, two shoulders, two hips, not the other way around. What was that about anatomy lesson? Okay, so your hips are very stable joints, okay, with a little bit less range of motion. Your shoulders are by design much less stable, but you have a much bigger range of motion so that we can do all these things, reach out and touch things and all the rest of it, right? Whereas the other ones, we need the stability to stand. I mean, this is why if you were like for a fancy pantsy yogi to go up into, you know, some sort of arm balance, it's putting a lot of pressure. You're asking for the kind of stability in terms of bearing body weight in this unstable joint, this really hypermobile joint that you would normally be asking your hips to do, right? So why are we talking about this? Well, because I think that what I've heard from a number of people is that getting pain, okay, so I'm not diagnosing so much as just talking about general trends, things that I hear, things that I see when people are talking about how their bodies move. One big point of impingement is right up here, okay, and I won't get into the naming muscles and so on, but there's a strip of muscle that runs across the top of the shoulder. And really what happens is it's in this sort of action where the arm lifts up like this and kind of comes up overhead like this. It really depends. Some people's bodies are going to be built with more space, more sort of natural room in here, and they can come right up and it's not a big deal. And other people, they're going to come up kind of to here, and then to go further north than that, it's going to start to impinge. What ends up happening is the muscle actually gets kind of caught under the bit of bone. Okay, so it basically just, the hinge point starts cutting into the bone, and it hurts. Like this is not a nice feeling. And you can actually try this where you are. So this is not just a demonstration. This is meant to be something you can experience. So bring your arm out to the side, okay? And lay your fingers out, okay? As if you're like high five, okay? Thumb is gonna be facing the same direction as your face, so thumb facing forward. And then what I'm gonna ask you to do is to internally rotate your shoulder. And the easiest way to accomplish that is simply to turn your thumb down, okay? And for some of us, you might even be able to turn it back, okay? Now, see what this did to my shoulders. It turned it all the way in, okay? Now for me to, and I'm not gonna do it, and I'm not asking you to do it, for me to go much higher now, you can see, we'll probably see in my face, this is like super crunchy, no good, Nick, okay? Not a nice feeling. So what ends up, just let that go, if you're feeling that. What the general principle here is with our shoulders, with our rotator cuff, when we're moving, so I'm back to that neutral position, let's try it the other way. Take your thumb up, so we're externally rotating our shoulder. You might even really rotate and take your thumb back in space. Okay, now, just to be clear, moving the lower arm and the hand, we can do this independent of the shoulder, but it's really just a cue to get you feeling that back and forth in the shoulder itself, okay? And the simple way you can actually try this experientially, now try lifting, okay? Versus internal rotation and try lifting, okay? So the simple thing is, if we wanna come up, like say in a sun salutation, is to always have our shoulders being externally rotated. None of this is to say that internal rotation is a lousy move. Like there are lots of, I actually think in a practice, to the extent that we can build up some strength in our internal rotation in both our hips and our shoulders is great. It's an awesome practice to pick up. But if we want to create some space, like if we want to avoid that impingement, then opening the shoulder up is going to create a lot more space. One last little thing that I'm going to ask you to actually, we're going to do this as a group, okay? So you can pick a side, any side, and what we'll do is we'll just bring the hand down to the side, okay? Finger rolled out so that we're externally rotated, okay? And then I'm going to ask you to sweep your arm back and up and down, and then as you come down, you can actually begin to sweep and close, almost like a front crawl. Close your shoulder, internal rotation. So you can see I'm rotating my thumb down and my pinky up. And then as you come through, you begin to spin, and doing the thumb comes up again, and you come over. Okay? So it's that. This simple, see, that's where that opening and closing is often missing. If it was a back crawl, okay, coming forward with her hand again, turn your pinky up, okay, come back into your crawl, and as you come back behind, open again, you're going to turn the shoulder, open, and sweep down, and turn up, and down. Does that make sense? Can you, and more to the point, when I say make sense, not make sense up here, it might make sense up here, can you feel it in your bodies? Okay? And again, you can kind of play with that on the other side. Back crawl, front crawl. It's truly, the motion for one direction is going to be the opposite motion for the other direction. Okay? How's that? Yeah? Yep. Yep. Well, and you know what? Actually, that's part of this, is that we started today before I pressed record, we started talking about how much time we're spending online. And if you actually bring your hands forward like you're going to be on a computer, then you can feel a couple of things happen. Your back stretches out, your shoulders drop in, these muscles get short and tight, and we have a tendency to we have these carpal claws, and then we get into all this kind of crunchy internal rotation action. So what we want to do with our yoga is open everything up. And we're going to do that right now. We're going to do it with some movement. So feel free, as we try this sequence, to adjust your sitting position, okay? You could be seated on a chair too, by the way. You don't have to be on the floor, not by any stretch, okay? Take a moment and pause. Let go of the anatomy. Know that if you have any questions about what I offered up there, we can always return. And just take stock of, not your day, of yourself. How are you doing? How are you right now? So just putting aside whatever came before, and equally not needing to attend to what comes after, okay? We can't change what happened before, not for this half an hour. We don't need to worry about it. And attending to what comes later brings you no closer to dealing with it, whatever's there. In fact, you're going to be in a better position to deal with whatever has to be dealt with by committing yourself fully to where we are right now. Okay. So just noticing all of that, noticing your breath. The breath is a great barometer for our state of physical well-being and also of our mental well-being. If we're feeling sped up or sluggish, if we're fighting ourselves at all, dealing with any stress. So just letting the answer to this question bubble up. The question is, what do you need right now? Deny yourself nothing. So if you need it, get it. Give it to yourself. Okay. So we're going to begin, and what we're going to do is we're going to practice these moves one by one, and then we're going to see if we can put it together into a little shoulder sequence that you can practice on your own. Okay? Either in parts or as a whole. All right. So to start us off, just getting a really sort of proud bearing to your seat. So what I mean by that is we're not slumped, okay? We're sitting up, sitting forward in our seat, however we are situated, okay? What's happening in terms of the rest of our body doesn't really matter. We could have, hands on here, they could be here, they could be here, like totally doesn't matter. In fact, what we're going to do is bring our hands out front, Okay? Really reach forward, like you're gonna touch the screen or reach through the screen. We're gonna, like kiss the tips of our fingers, okay? And then bring your hands together, interlace the fingers, okay? And then take the hands back and turn them out, okay? Now, you'll notice we're into our internal rotation there, okay? So know that and this is part of why I led with the demonstration. So if we are here, because there are some moves we're gonna come through here, particularly if that, and you can let it go, just wanted you to feel that initial stretch, particularly in here. If this doesn't feel good, what I would suggest is disengage your hands, turn your thumbs out, space, okay? And you're gonna get all the goodness, okay? If it feels like, oh no, this is different than this, bring your hands together, okay? Just a slightly different shape. All right, so what we're gonna do, in whichever form makes sense for you, press the hands out, and then inhale, bring them up overhead. Exhale, hands come down. We're gonna continue that. Let's do this 3 times. So inhale, come up. Exhale, come down. You might hear that I'm actually inhaling through my nose. So go there if that's not obstructed. Exhaling through my mouth today to really cue to my nervous system that this is about relaxing. And then just shake the hands out for a second. Okay, so there's move number 1. Just a simple, bringing the hands up overhead. You can explore and play with this, like by unbinding and just bringing the hands overhead. Or bringing the hands overhead. Or bringing the hands overhead, okay? There's lots of different ways. It might seem like a subtle difference, but all of those moves change things up, okay? And speaking of changing things up, let's bring our hands together again. Interlace your fingers. Now, how many people out there interlaced in exactly the same way? I'm gonna suspect that all of us did, right? And that's A-okay. That's fine, right? That's what it shows is there's a pattern. What in Buddhist terms you'd call a samskara, or like a set, like a groove. This is, why do you put your hands this way? Because you always put your hands this way, okay? And is there anything wrong with that? No, okay? But what happens if you take your hands and put them the other way? Interlace your fingers in what feels weird, probably, okay? And you can see even there I kind of cheated a little bit. I changed, but I left my thumb the same way. So, okay, now turn the hands out, okay? Come on up, and then we're gonna side bend. So get really, really heavy in your right sitting bone, okay? Right under the cheek of your bum on the right. And I'm just coming up to the camera to make sure that, okay, I got a little alert. I just want to make sure no one was locked out. Okay, so we're here, and then with that heavy right sitting bone, reach up and out, okay? So it's not so much getting over to the side here, it's here as you exhale, and then inhale up, and exhale over to the other side. Okay, you can also just grab onto the wrist if that feels better. Let's come back up. If you do that, you're gonna switch, and over. So it's almost like we've got this big barrel here. This side's getting a little bit smaller in the barrel, and this side we're opening up the side ribs and really breathing into them. Inhale, come up. And exhale. And inhale up. And exhale, arms come down. Okay. Good. So we're there. Now, that's move number 2. Okay, so we've come up, we've come side to side. Move number 3, okay, is we're gonna, again, take our hands forward. Now this is a little bit of a funkier move. I'm gonna come up onto my knees just because, like I say, it kind of feels nicer for me to be here. I've got a little bit more space for my arms. So we're here, and then really press that forward as if you were trying to make, like I say, make contact as far forward as you can, okay? And then come up to what feels like kind of 12 o'clock on your inhale. Exhale, doesn't really matter what side. Begin to trace a circle, but keep your palms forward as much as possible. Come down on the exhale, and then as you come up the other side, inhale. Good. And continue that. We'll do 2 more passes here. You could be slow. So I'm just moving with the speed of my breath, but you absolutely can move at your own pace. Slower if it works for you, faster if you want to explore. And if you feel something, you're like, ooh, there's something kind of interesting there, you might kind of track back. Or what's that? All right, and then come back up. And then reverse. Exhale down. Inhale up. And can you feel what's happening in the back of your body? So your shoulder blades. Notice this, like we're tracing the circle way out front, but all the work, or all the motion really, is coming through the circling of our shoulder blades, which is what we're trying to get at here. Okay, come on back up and through, and let it go. Okay, and just giving the shoulders a little, letting them kind of be free in between, not a bad thing. Okay, so that is, there's our third, 4th round, so 4th action. You probably know where we're going here. Interlace. Switch it up if you want, okay? Now, from here, this is gonna be all about moving our shoulders forward and back. So I'm gonna give you the side view, okay? So I'm here, and I'm gonna first begin by pressing my palms forward and allowing the shoulders to track forward with them. So my shoulder blades are opening up to the side, and I'm creating some space in my middle back. In fact, my upper middle back, I'm actively taking it in the opposite direction to my hands, okay? So this would be like cat back if we were in cat-cow. And then, without changing anything else about the position, just bring your hands and shoulders back. Ooh, look at that. So it's this and this. Inhale to extend. Exhale to draw everything back in. So shoulder blades coming toward one another at the back of our body. This, and again, just exploring. Again, if this feels hinky, being in too much internal rotation, you can just take your hands and move like that. Just loosening things up. And again, just let that go. Okay. Are we at our last one? Let me see, I just made a little note to myself. Yeah, we are. Okay, this one, I call this one the lasso. So if you're thinking about like a, like a rodeo rider, like, this is what we're doing, okay? But how are we gonna do our lasso? Oh wait, I know. Let's take our hands and press them forward. Okay? Because why not? This was, and again, this developed organically in my practice. I hit the mat. I was like, what are all the ways I can take my shoulders into interesting movements? Okay, so we're here. Now, the lasso is at the top. So I'm gonna bring my hands forward. They don't have to be pressed right up to the top. They might face forward, right? And back. Almost like, so we were doing this circle here. Now we're doing it here, okay? So, and it's probably going to be smaller, and you may not get, it's not about how far we get, it's just about opening things up. And see, I'm actually taking my arms kind of in behind. Switch sides. Yeah, if you get some cracks in there, that's nice. That's good, that's a bonus. Ooh, good. And then for me, just because, again, not part of the sequence, but this is what feels right for me right now. So if there's something else for you that feels right, this is the time to do it. For me, it's to take my hands behind, and you could do this sitting like this too, okay? And just tensing my fingers, and then taking my sternum forward. Just to release, because we've been in a lot of this, just to let all of that go. Okay, and that's it. And there's our sequence, okay? Now, how are we feeling? We okay? Do you want to put this together? Gesundheit. Okay. All right, so let's see if we can do this. This is more a test of my memory. Let's see if I come up with my list in order. So, come to sitting. And you're like, come to sitting, I've been sitting, what are you talking about? And you just like let everything go. Okay. And hands come together. I'll leave it to you to decide how you're going to interlace your fingers. But see, now that I've introduced that even as a concept, it's going to be there, playing around. Where am I more comfortable, in my set pattern or in an open new one? Inhale the arms up. Exhale to one side. Inhale up. Exhale to the other. Inhale up. And then circles forward. So bringing your hands as far forward as you can, tracing that circle one direction, and then in the other. Good. And then we come down to about eye level and just work the shoulders back, the shoulders forward. Inhale back up. Find your lasso. One in each direction. And release. There you go. Okay, and now we're going to really, I was talking about patterns, and I think it's kind of interesting, so let's play with that. Come back to your release. Okay. Then interlace your fingers, maybe the reverse of where we just were. Turn your hands out. Inhale up. We're going to reverse our whole pattern. So we'll start with a lasso. Come across the top. One in each direction. Good. Hands come down to eye level. Pull them in. Press them out. Pull them in. Press them out. Good. Then bring your hands a little higher. Circle. Forward circles. One direction, and then the other. Good. Inhale back up. Tip to one side, heavy in the opposite sitting bone. Inhale up. Tip to the other side. Inhale up, and exhale down. That, my friends, is it. That's there, not the whole class, but there's that sequence. So just notice how you feel. Now, the good news about that is, so there were 5 discrete parts. The video will be posted later. So if there are parts of this that felt lousy, skip them. You don't need them. If there are parts that feel good, and you want to explore them repeatedly, either on their own or as part of this whole sequence, it's one that you can go to, okay? It's certainly not the only shoulder sequence. I've got a couple of other ones that I've shared in the past, but that's what I'm playing with this week. So, how do you feel? Yeah? Oh, okay, you're welcome. Oh, awesome. Well, if we're going to give ourselves some love up here in the shoulders, I wanted to take you down to a place we also don't get to very often, which is our wrists. Okay? Now, let's see if I'm going to move back just so that you can see my wrists on the mat. By the way, what I'm doing right now, just this little crawl around the mat, is a wonderful practice. Okay? It's really, really nice. If your knees can handle it, and if not, you can pad your knees, but it's a super duper practice. Not where we're going right now, though. Okay. What we're going to... Yeah, for sure. Absolutely, for sure. Yeah. So what we're going to do is this little wrist series is meant to just get the wrists open and mobilized and to open up the forearms too. Okay, which tend to get, especially when we're we're on those Zoom calls, all tight. So what you're going to do here is come up onto hands and knees as long as that's comfortable. Know that, and I'm going to show you here with my mat, I'm going to just double. I don't really, I'm not uncomfortable, but let's say I was. I just pull a little section of the mat forward, and then I can bring my knees down. Luxury, okay? So you're there. Now, we're going to spread our hands. If you've got 2 decks of cards, so you're like this, and the hands are all closed in, spread them wide, okay? Like, hello hands, we're open, okay? And think of it this way, like you're gonna put them down onto the mat or onto the floor, less that you're gonna patty cake this down like you're slamming it down, and more like this is an arch, okay? I'm not sure if you can see from a distance, but my hand, the palm of my hand is totally curved, like you could almost put a ball in there right now, okay? So that's the same thing we want on the mat. So think about pressing in through your index finger base, your thumb base, your pinky base, and everything else lifts away, okay? So we're here, and then to the extent that it's comfortable, okay? Oh, and actually, even before we do that, turn the eyes of your elbows forward. So the inner elbows move forward, and all that move is doing, you guessed it, we're opening our shoulders up, so it creates that space, okay? And then you can lean forward over your wrist a little bit or a lot, okay? I heard an ah. Welcome to sensation. Okay. So just know that we want ah, we don't want ah. So if this feels like too much, okay, I should say too, I have to be careful about my how far I'm taking it, my own practice demoing for you, like taking you through this, because this is something I've done a lot of. So I've got a big range of motion and a lot of like mobility and strength in my wrists at this point from practice. So don't feel like if you come to here and you're like, oh, that's it, I've got to get to here. No, you don't. Okay, not today. Take your fingers, the tips of your fingers, turn them out. Okay, and again, you might spread your fingers wide, and then it's just a little rock from side to side. You're rocking into the fingers towards the tips on one side and then the other, ideally without lifting the wrist up too much. But again, this arch here at the base of the hand, I'm not jamming this in, okay? Instead, there's a little, you can see I'm exaggerating it here, but I could like slide a straw in there into the curve. So it's really about opening things up without doing violence to our own bodies, right? Just using what's there. Turn your fingers in now, in toward one another. Feel your shoulder blades spread as we do this. And then again, just a little side to side, just playing with the motion. Okay, last move. Wrists come forward. Ooh. And then for this one, this would be taking our foot off of the gas, like we're applying the brakes. This is less. And as you lean back, ooh, more. So we're stretching the inside of the forearms, breathing into it. Okay, if you feel like you're straining or like this is a lot of effort, your body will sense stress and the muscles will tighten up. It's actually counterintuitive to try too hard. Just relax, okay? And then last thing is you can actually peel your hands up. Ooh, give those fingers a little stretch. And go easy here. Might be tender after all of that stretching. Okay. Last thing is, and again, I'm just going to demo, we'll just take it into one or two of these, but we want to move on both sides. Okay, so then the move here is to come onto the tops of our hands, but this is super gentle. We could just be here and we're just gently laying them down. To the extent that I sit my bum back in space, I'm stretching the fronts of my forearms. Okay, fingers turn in, and here the sticky mat can kind of catch your hand so you can pull out. Okay, still spreading those fingers wide. The really deep, this is the deep one, so go easy, okay? The closer your hands come together too, the harder it's gonna be, so maybe come a little bit wider. Breathing, and then fingers come forward, lean forward into it, any amount, and then release. Ooh. And then this last move, partially because it just feels really nice after that, and partially because it's an opportunity to mess with it, to mess with our patterns, mess with our nervous system's normal way of negotiating the world. Okay, so hands come together. Don't worry, we're not going to turn them out anymore. Just into this like double fist where we're interlaced. Okay, and then what I'm going to ask you to do in the way that feels natural to you is to simply go into a figure eight, like an hourglass. So just taking the hands and wrists. And the whole thing, you can see my whole complex, the forearms are participating here, the elbows are turning, the shoulders, the upper arms, even, like I can feel this right down into the lower part of my shoulder blades, okay? So just finding that. Now, when you are feeling like, okay, you might even slow it down, really look at that motion, look at what it is, like with your eyes this time. Normally we're just all about the feels, but actually see it and then reverse it. And this is the part where it probably feels a little clunky. You're like, what the? Your body's going, what? What is happening? You're rocking my world here. Well, it's a clumsy metaphor, but how, let that go. Just shake that out. How often do we go through our lives doing just that, right? Kind of stubbornly trying one thing over and over and over and over again. And if we just flip it and try it a little bit differently, what happens? Maybe something good, maybe not something not so good, but something, right? Now, this is gonna, and again, get really comfortable for this, okay? Truly. So adjust your position as needed. Take one hand and take the other, and you're gonna use your thumb, okay? And if you're saying to yourself, as I press my thumb into the meaty bit, so my left thumb is pressing into the meaty part of my palm on my right hand. And all through kind of each finger in turn, you might be saying to yourself, this doesn't seem like so much a yoga move as a little massage, a self-massage for my hand. And if you're saying that to yourself, you are correct. Okay. Oop. Sorry about that. Should be back. There, sorry about that. So, for a lot of years, including some years where I was practicing, some not so small number of years I was practicing yoga, I took evidence of dysfunction. You can see I'm even kind of just stretching the fingers individually. I took evidence of wear and tear, hello Henry, as evidence. See, Henry's gone into his downward dog. He knows what the score is. I took all of that, damage and breakdown of stuff over time as evidence that I was fit, as evidence that I was working hard, okay? And really what it was in retrospect, let's switch hands. So moving the right thumb into the meaty part of the left palm. And again, like there is no right or a wrong way here. I just wanted to point out that like this is something that is available to us at all times. And yet how often, and like of course, many of us are isolated right now, so you may not have another set of hands, like a hand massage or something magic about it in particular, I think, having another pair of hands, massage your hands, but there's a different kind of magic in showing yourself a bit of kindness and rejecting the idea that, breakdown is evidence of, job well done. In my own life now, I look at that and say, what you thought was, effort and excelling was really just neglect, neglect of self, right? Okay. And and then just notice that. Just let your hands drop down and notice that. Notice how they feel. Okay? Everything a little bit more open, a little bit more relaxed. All right. How are we doing? The last thing I guess I really do need to know is what time is it? How long have we gone here? Okay, my goodness. All right, so let's actually, to wrap this up, we're going to come onto our backs. Do this gently, and this is going to be a one-time only transition, okay? So in a way that makes sense for you, shift your weight, transfer over, okay? With support, come down, okay, onto your back, and place your heels underneath your knees, roughly. Okay? You might be able to reach forward. This is a common yoga cue. You'll hear like some people will say reach forward and reach for the backs of your ankles. If you have a particular body type, you may never get there. So it's not so much the reach as it is the stacking underneath. Then bring the backs of your arms onto the mat beside you. Okay, fingers can point up toward the ceiling. Spread your toes. Okay, get really, really firm in there, and then begin to press your hips up in space. Okay, not so much pressure on the back of the head, more on the shoulders and on the back of the arms. So like right now, I'm not asking you to lift your head, but I could actually lift my head in this shape because I've got all the pressure on the outside of the shoulders and the outside of the arms. You can even press a little bit more into the arms in this bridge shape. I've kind of tucked my thumbs underneath my hips, but that's just for fun. Okay. And exhale, come on down. Sorry, and that was me just asking someone to scoot. Okay. So once we're out of our bridge, then what I'm going to ask you to do is to inhale and bring both feet up, and we're going to go into a very, very simple twist. And I don't mean simple like easy to understand simple. Just we're not going to make this a big, big, deep twist. Just together, let both legs drop toward one side. Okay? The shoulder may come up on the opposite side. That's okay. And then any amount that you can, keeping your legs down, keeping your knees down, and you can see I've taken my right hand and I'm actively holding my legs in position. Then take the opposite shoulder and relax it down. You can even bring the arm down. If it feels comfortable to turn your head, you can do that. Notice how this impacts on your breath. You can probably even hear it in my voice. Less room. Okay, that's okay. Inhale, let go of the legs, bring them up. Exhale, sweep them over to the other side. And then again, same thing. The option for a little bind. You may notice, you probably will notice differences side to side. You could probably even see that if now you're on your backs, but if you were watching me, you would have seen that on this side, my shoulders stay down the whole time. Like I've got more range of motion. Okay? Interesting pattern. That's all it is. Inhale, and legs come up. And exhale, allow them to come down and relax and roll out. And shoulders and hands relax and roll out. Let's let go of the breath. So not trying to shape or control anything. And we'll stay here just for a far too short Navasana not Navasana, Shavasana. I'm confusing my Sanskrit. So corpse pose, whatever we're calling it, just relaxing. Sweep your feet together, bring them together, and sweep your arms up overhead. You might even be able to kind of snow angel that action. And then reach your toes away, reach your fingers away from toes away from fingers. Stretch out through the sides of your body, and big inhale. And exhale. Sigh, knees come in, hugging your arms around. Maybe giving yourself a little, just roll from side to side here. Okay, if you practice other poses like happy baby, you can totally do that, but that is not necessary. When you are ready, just tip over to your right side. Okay. And then placing your left hand on the floor, staggering your legs to come up, or accomplishing this slowly in a way that makes sense for your body. Come on back up. And come to sit. So now we integrate the practice, right? Checking in again from where you were half an hour, 40 minutes ago. Notice how you feel. Thank yourself for taking the time to practice. Know that you can always come back. So this practice lives online now, so that means it's yours. I'm letting it go out into the world. So you give yourself a little piece in, you send that piece out, or say whatever you need to say to end the practice, whether that's namaste or thank you or whatever it is. And as always, I always thank you, because without you, there's no this. It's all about all of you, not about me. I am going to, for those of you that are online with me, just bear with me for a second as I turn off the video. Bye, online people.